Hello, and welcome to the Capital City Go-Go Basketball Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Pearson, and we will be wrapping up season two today. We're going to wrap up some of the Summer League analysis that I started with the newsletter, Capital City G2 Insight, which is on my Substack, sam.pearson substack.com. Again, that's G2 Insight, my subscription news blog letter for the Capital City Go-Go. And we talked, at least I wrote about the general analysis of the overall team during the Summer League this past summer, which I gave a pretty good review for the team in the whole. Though they were just 2-2, there wasn't really any blowouts, and most of the players that played were good development. I thought everybody got a chance to play. Again, it was just a developmental thing. But one of the things that this is a subsequent from that G League newsletter, we're going to talk about three players in particular that I had an eye on. The first was Johnny Davis. He was our last year lottery picked at 10. He spent most of the time in the G League, which is kind of unusual for a lottery player. He spent an enormous amount of time. So we'll be able to discuss that today. The other player, Bilal Coulibaly, the first round pick of this past draft, and Tristan Vujicic, who was a second round pick around number 42. So I thought those three players were the players that I wanted to key on and see how they progressed during the summer league. So we're going to go in depth with regard to that. But I just wanted to take time to thank the subscribers. If you're just joining for the first time with the YouTube channel, thank you. I hope you come back for some more. And those of you who've been with me for a little while now, so appreciate you coming back and getting some G League insight, in particular with the Washington Wizards. So we're going to talk about Johnny Davis a little bit. Johnny Davis, as I mentioned earlier, is a 10th round. 10th round. He's a pick number 10 in the first round, so he's a lottery pick 2 years ago. One of the things that were surprising this past year was he spent quite a few games in the G League, which is unusual for a lottery pick. So there were some concerns with regard to the speed of the game, which he didn't quite mesh, in particular, Summer League of last year. So that kind of hampered his development with regard to being on the Wizard roster full time. So he spent quite a bit of time in the G League. One of the things, to be frank, he didn't stand out. Obviously, with the basketball skills that he has, he can play with up and down with the NBA league. But one of the things, if you're a lottery pick, your skills should be showing out. You, with regard if you're athletic or you have a tremendous ability to shoot the 3 pointers, things of those natures. You can take out one facet of somebody's game, in particular in the lottery pick, and say this stands out. This person, whatever they do, this is their calling card. Haven't been able to reach that point with Johnny Davis yet. He's great enthusiasm, wants to improve, but again, he doesn't have that signature move or defensive play or anything of that nature. So I guess there was a concern about the regime last year of making sure Johnny got some more repetition in the G League. Again, while in the G League, he did okay. I can't say he was a particular standout. He got better during the year. So toward the end of the G League last year, I did see some more improvements with regard to assists and shooting the basketball. He's always been a good slasher, but I think sometimes he has limited athleticism, and he can't blow anybody with his athletics. So he is a cerebral player, but even being a cerebral player, I think the game is still moving a bit too fast for him. In the G League this past summer, in the Summer League, he got about 30 minutes a game, which was definitely a here's the keys, kid. You need to improve your game. So he did. He averaged about 16 points a game, which was the leading scorer, which we should expect with a year under his belt and dealing with free agents and rookies, that would be the leading scorer. But again, one of the things I look for when I'm scouting or evaluating a player is whether or not they could do one thing at a minimum particularly well. And I have not seen that. He does a lot of things and a lot of things that are okay. So I have concerns with regard to this upcoming year. We've got Jordan Poole as the starting guard. We got Kyle Kuzma as starting forward. We got DeLon Wright as a backup guard. So the guard position is going to be difficult. He's not quite big enough to be a swingman, so to play the small forward position, maybe in limited circumstances. But again, even if he did play the small forward position, he'd be challenged height wise against other players that are a little bit bigger than him. So again, we will follow his career, though there's some kind of warning signs that we'll be looking for in hopes that he'll correct them and hopefully he'll get some more minutes this year. He really shouldn't be spending that much time with Finney in the G League this year. So one player that will be spending some time in the G League, but his name is Bilal Koulibaly, seventh pick out of France. He is a good defensive player, 6'7", 6'8", maybe might grow up to 6'9". Versatile player defensively. His chops are pretty much set in stone. He's just got to get more reps. I think he could be a lockdown defender in the future. And again, with most rookies, his offensive game is kind of atrocious. But with the reps, he should be good. And it's a very solid pick. And with regard to the pick, you can tell that the Wizards are not rushing him. They view him as a long-term player that's going to be in the system for a while. So there wasn't any immediacy for him to plug and play right away. So what time that he spend in the G League probably will be just to make sure he gets his reps in. But again, we have Kyle Kuzma and a lot of other players that are in that position. So, depending on how the team plays, he might not get as much play as I think, and he might go down to the G League for a few limited rotations. I don't expect to see much of him down there. But again, I think it's a good investment in the player. So kudos to them. I'm not sure if I would have moved up 2 spots, give way to second round picks, but it was minimal to get the player that they wanted. So kudos to the new front office for being bold and not do things as ordinary as the past regime. Another player that I thought I would take a look at and scrutinize is Tristan Vucevic from Europe. He is a 6'10", the new model player for the NBA that's not really playing down low, but is hanging around a three-point line, shooting three-pointers, creating space so players can slash into the paint for layups or get mid-range jumpers. So the basketball players now are different from the 80s and 70s in which the big men were down low. Now it's the complete opposite. The big men are away from the basket and shooting three-pointers. One of the things I thought was great for Tristan was his ability to shoot the three-pointer. He looked very flawless, had a good range, and he had the nice snap back with his wrist to make a basket. But it was interesting when I looked at the stats at the end of the year, or at the end of the tournament, he was only a 30% shooter. So what we can determine from that is he needs to be in the gym a little bit more. He's got good form, but he needs to make the baskets. So, but I suspect that he's going to do pretty well. Again, I was more interested in form when I saw him, and I guess I was a bit surprised that he didn't make as many shots as I was enamored with the form that he had. He averaged about 7 rebounds a game. He played the third most minutes behind Johnny Davis and Bialy. So he's good. He ended up being particularly a draft and stash player. There was thoughts that he might play with the G League or get some limited run with the Wizards, but he's going to be seasoned a little bit more playing in Europe, the same team that he played for last year. So, in all said and done, I think it was a good move for both him personally to develop a little bit more, and for the Wizards to know that they have the big man in Europe getting skills, and sometime maybe in a year or two they can break him over and refine him, polish him up, and they've got a center forward who can stretch the floor. So again, another good move by the new front office. Uh, Transactions that occurred since August at the end of summer league. We have a new player. His name is Gerard Butler. You may remember him from most valuable player, the Final Four with the Baylor Bears back in 2021, I believe. Point guard, mostly point, but I think he played a little shooting guard. He used to play for the um, G League team Thunder Blue, and of course, the connection is the new general manager of the Wizards is Will Dawkins, who used to be the manager or front office person for the Thunder Blue. And reading between the lines, at least me, I think that this might be a move in preparation of not retaining Johnny Davis for the 30-year contract. Again, my speculation, but Johnny has a tough road ahead of him with regard to getting playing time, especially with Jordan Poole and a couple of other guards that are more experienced in front of him. And now we know that the two-way contract that Gerard Butler has signed will be another obstacle that Johnny Davis faced in order to get playing time. So that leads to the majority storylines that we'll be looking at the start of the third year. We'll be looking at whether or not Johnny Davis will improve enough to get that offer for a third year. Again, as I kind of illustrated here, that we have some concern with regard. He needs to really, really step up his game to improve in order to secure that contract. And now we know there are people in front of him for playing time, and we have Gerard Butler on the G League, or maybe it's a two-way contract. He can play some nights with the Wizards, some nights with the Go-Go. So again, that's going to cut into Johnny Davis's playing time. So again, we will figure out or observe how he will handle this and whether or not he will play enough to justify being retained for his third-year contract. Another storyline that we'll be pursuing and watching over at the start of the season, we see we had a quick change of franchise with regard to the Wizards. Tommy Shepard was dismissed, kind of surprising to the people in the DMV area, District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia area. So when things were moved and franchises were changing hands, things happened quickly. Got a new president of basketball operations. You got the new Will Dawkins, the specifically head of the Wizards. So the change in the front office moved fast. The G League has been a little bit slower. So again, the storyline will be whether or not current Capital City Go-Go general manager Amber Nichols will retain her position. As I mentioned earlier, the past 2 years have been playoff success for Amber's and the G League, Cap Go-Go. So we will see whether or not that will sustain her to get an extension on a contract. The people, Tommy Shepard and her regime, she's the last person standing. So people are slowly bringing in the new regime, bringing in people they want to work with, as evidenced by Gerard Butler signing a two-way contract with the Go-Go. Butler worked with the current general manager, Dawkins, and as I mentioned earlier, with the Thunder Blue. G League team. So we'll follow that closely, and hopefully uh, Amber Nichols will justify, as we know here, watching her the past couple of years, that she's good at what she does and she should still be retained. Well, and all that is kind of the quick wrap up for what's going on as we're moving into the third year. I've made a few changes. I'm going to continue to be basketball centric, but I've met some not players, but some up and coming broadcasters that I think are very good with regard to giving a diversity of sports, some boxing, some MMA, soccer. So I'll be throwing maybe a podcast in which I just do a different sport, get a different insight. And one of the things, even with a different story, we can always find stories in which people are trying to achieve their goals. So think of that more as, you know, goal achieving rather than different sport. And I'm not interested in that particular sport. If you're interested in people or want people to succeed and what it takes to meet a challenge, I think these intermittent new podcasts of guests with different sports will be right up your alley. And one final note, the one change I should have started out with is the Capital City Go-Go have a new uh, coach. His name is Cody Tolbert. He was a former LSU assistant coach, and he is now going to be coaching the Wizards. I have not yet discovered the connection between the new management and Mr. Tolbert. I sound like conspiracy brother, but I'm sure he's here for a reason, and somebody knew his background well. So that might be something I'll do some online research and see what the connection uh, that he has with some place or someone in the new front office here with the Wizards. So on that conspiracy note, I would like to thank you all for subscribing to the channel, to the newsletter. And if you're so inclined, please send this information to people that are interested in basketball, entertainment, and I will see you on the other side, starting the new third year of the Capital City Go-Go Basketball Chat Podcast. Thank you so much. And remember, as I always try to tell people, if they have the choice, always choose to be kind to one another. Thanks a lot, and I appreciate your time and effort.